go, Daddy! I saw blood everywhere.
The contract.
And the car accident.
What would you do if your 9-year-old daughter looked you in the eyes and said, "Daddy, please don't go to work today. You're going to die"? Kwame laughed it off, but hours later, the car he was supposed to be in plunged off a cliff. That was just the beginning. Amara started having dreams, terrifyingly accurate ones. She saw her father arrested in public after signing a contract. She saw betrayal. She saw death. And worse, she saw her own mother plotting to kill him. Sounds insane? This isn't fiction. This story is inspired by a real case that shook Ghana's business elite. A respected entrepreneur betrayed by his best friend and nearly murdered by the woman he loved. In this video, you'll see how one man turned the tables using nothing but a dream, a hidden recorder, and the courage to face the truth. You'll discover the shocking power of intuition and the price of ignoring it. If Kwame hadn't listened to his daughter that day, he would be dead right now. Rain dripped slowly from the rusted edge of the window pane, ticking against the glass like a second heartbeat. The moon was smudged behind a veil of clouds, and the air inside the bedroom hung thick and too still. Then came the scream. "Daddy, don't go to work tomorrow. I saw blood everywhere." Kwame sat bolt upright. Sweat clung to his chest. The sound of his daughter's voice had ripped through the silence like a blade. He scrambled out of bed, heart pounding, feet heavy against the hardwood floor. Down the hall, a narrow strip of light spilled from under Amara's door. He pushed it open. She was curled into a ball, her nightdress soaked, hair plastered to her temples, sobs breaking in her throat. Her tiny fingers gripped the bedsheet like it was all she had left. Kwame knelt beside her. "Hey, it's okay, baby. It's just a dream." She shook her head violently. "No, it wasn't like the others. It was real. I saw it. A crash. The sky was red. You weren't breathing. Daddy, please don't go tomorrow." The hallway behind them creaked. Nia appeared in the doorway, arms crossed over her satin robe, face pulled tight with impatience. "It's the board meeting, Kwame. If you miss it, they'll think you've gone soft." Kwame didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Amara's, dark, wide, unblinking. There was something in them, not just fear, something deeper, knowing. "I'll talk to her," Nia muttered, stepping forward. Kwame raised a hand. "Don't. Go back to bed." He stayed beside his daughter until her breathing slowed, until her small hand stopped trembling in his, until the house returned to silence, broken only by the rain tapping its slow warning. Morning broke with a strange chill, not the kind that came from weather, but from absence, the kind of quiet that sits just before a choice. Kwame stood by the mirror, adjusting his tie, then paused. His hands fell to his sides. From the kitchen, Nia's voice rang out, sharp as always. "If you're late, you'll lose the deal. Do you want Jabari thinking you're avoiding the merger?" He looked down the hallway again. Amara's door was closed. A faint light glowed beneath it. "I'm not going," he said quietly. Nia stepped into view, her expression blank with disbelief. "You're not what?" "I'm staying home." "You're joking." "I'm not. Send the files with Musa. Have him deliver everything to Jabari. Let them know I'll review the rest remotely." She stared at him. "You're letting a child's nightmare dictate your business decisions now?" Kwame didn't answer. He just picked up his mug and walked past her like a man walking away from a cliff's edge. By 10 a.m., the house had settled into a reluctant calm. Kwame was in the study, distractedly reading a report. Nia was on her second phone call, pacing, voice full of irritation and clipped syllables. Amara sat on the couch, legs tucked under her, still quiet, still watching. Then came the sound. Tires screeching, the phone buzzing, a knock at the door, rapid, urgent, final. Nia opened it. A man stood outside, rain dripping from his coat. Musa's colleague. "There's been an accident. The car didn't make the turn. It went over the ridge. He died on impact." Everything stopped. The clock, the breathing, the house itself. Kwame stood in the hallway, his knees threatening to give out. His voice came out as a whisper. "Musa." The man nodded slowly. For a moment, Kwame didn't move. Then he turned, walked to the living room. Amara was standing now, eyes wide again, chest rising and falling. He dropped to his knees and pulled her into his arms. She didn't cry. He did. He held her tightly and whispered into her shoulder, "If I hadn't listened to you, I would have been in that car." Her arms wrapped around his neck. For the first time in months, she clung to him not like a scared child, but like someone who had been heard. Hours later, the rain turned to mist. A low fog crawled across the city's skyline. The house was quiet again, but not from sleep, from stunned disbelief. Kwame sat alone in the study. His fingers hovered over a sheet of paper, Musa's route, the time of departure, the estimated impact point. Every detail was there. Cold, clinical, undeniable. His eyes drifted to the corner of the room where a wooden giraffe Amara had painted stood on the shelf, yellow and uneven, with tiny stickers on its legs. He remembered the day she gave it to him, his birthday. She'd whispered, "So you never forget to look high even when it feels low." He wiped his face, the paper blurred. Behind him, Nia appeared, arms still folded, eyes colder than before. "You're going to make a spectacle out of this, aren't you?" He looked at her, exhausted. A man died today. She didn't flinch, and a deal may have died with him. "Stop. You chose superstition over strategy. This will cost you more than just a driver." He stood, his voice quiet but unwavering. "No, it saved me. That little girl you dismiss, she saved my life." Nia scoffed. "You think this changes anything?" He didn't answer. He just walked past her again. This time slower. This time heavier, like a man carrying the weight of a second chance. That night, as the house fell into its shallow, tentative sleep, Amara drew with a dull crayon under her blanket. Circles, red ones, like the sun, like stop signs, like tail lights. Kwame watched her from the doorway, arms crossed, heart full and torn. He thought of Musa, his laugh, his loyalty. His seatbelt always clicked first. He thought of the rain. He thought of the silence before the knock. And he thought, what if I hadn't listened? Outside, the wind brushed against the window panes again. This time, not like a warning, but like a whisper of what almost was. And somewhere deep in his chest, Kwame knew that dream was not just a dream. It was a voice in the dark that told the truth before the world could. He stepped into Amara's room, knelt down, and kissed her forehead. "Thank you," he murmured. "You saved me." She didn't open her eyes, but a small smile lifted at the corner of her lips. And the house, for the first time in days, exhaled. The candle blew out on its own. There was no draft, no window open, just still air, thick with something Amara couldn't name. She sat upright in bed, eyes wide, heart beating too loud for her chest. Outside the hallway, the house hummed its nighttime silence, but in her head, a different rhythm pulsed. She had seen it again. This time, not the crash, not the blood. This time, papers, a signature, and then shackles. Cold metal snapping shut, a sea of flashing cameras. Her father dragged away while strangers watched. No one helped, no one spoke. She tried to scream, but no sound came, not even a whisper. She swung her legs over the bed, trembling. Her feet barely touched the floor when she heard it, the faint click of a doorknob across the hall. Her father's study. Amara tiptoed to the edge of the corridor. Her fingers brushed the wall, tracing the grooves in the old plaster. The study door was ajar. Warm light spilled through. Inside, Kwame sat hunched at his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He hadn't slept. Not really. Not since the funeral. His eyes were fixed on a leather folder, his brow drawn tight. She stepped in quietly. "Daddy." He turned, startled, but softened at the sight of her. "You should be sleeping." Her voice was barely a breath. "I saw something again." He leaned back in his chair. "Another dream?" Amara nodded. "You signed something. Then they took you. In front of everyone. Like you were bad." Kwame's jaw clenched. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he reached for the folder on his desk. It was thicker than the others, heavy, glossy black. "Do you know who Jabari is?" he asked gently. Amara frowned. The man in the gray car? He smiled, surprised. Yes, that's him. He's my oldest friend. We've built a lot together. And now, he's brought me something new. A chance to grow the company. She crept closer, eyes flicking to the folder. That's what you were signing? He hesitated. I was about to. Amara looked at him, voice shaky. Don't. Why not? I don't know, but in the dream, your face looked like when Musa died, empty. Kwame leaned back, exhaling. Dreams. He wanted to dismiss them. Wanted to believe this was just a child's mind playing tricks. But last time, she had been right, and that memory hadn't left him. Not for a second. He opened the folder again. Inside, the contract was crisp, clean, too clean. Pages of numbers, charts, and clauses that bled together in business speak. At the bottom, his signature line. Everything looked legitimate, but that was the trick with danger. It always looked polished before it turned sharp. He picked up his phone. Oh, bang, he said into the receiver. I need you to go through a contract for me, quietly. No one knows but you. The next day stretched long and thin. Rain returned by noon, soft and steady, soaking the city in its hush. Kwame paced his office, the contract now closed and untouched on his desk. Nia had left early, claiming errands, her tone clipped as usual. Jabari hadn't called yet. That silence said more than words. When Obeng finally arrived, he didn't smile. He dropped a photocopy of the document on the desk. I found something, he said simply. Kwame didn't breathe. There's a clause buried near the back. Hard to spot. On the surface, it looks like standard liability transfer. But dig deeper, and it's a trap. If you sign this, any financial fallout, any loss, any debts from Jabari's company fall solely on you. Not shared, not split. Entirely you. Kwame stared at the page. The clause was tiny, hidden in jargon, one word off from the version they'd used in past deals. Obeng wasn't done. There's more. He pulled out a second sheet. Attached to the file is a board resolution, supposedly from your leadership team, approving the merger. Kwame frowned. I never saw this. That's because it's fake. His mouth went dry. Forgery? Obeng nodded. Stamped. Signed. Even notarized. But the notary doesn't exist. And 3 of the names are your former staff. One of them passed away 2 years ago. Something inside Kwame cracked. It wasn't just a bad deal. It was betrayal, planned, signed, sealed. He sank into his chair, hands trembling as he held the photocopy. If he had signed, if Amara hadn't said anything, he would have walked straight into the fire, smiling. Obeng spoke gently now. You've known him for years, but this isn't friendship. This is war in a business suit. Kwame nodded slowly, still staring at the signature line. His own name, empty, waiting. A grave he almost climbed into. That night, the house felt colder than usual, not from the weather, from the truth. Kwame stood at the foot of Amara's bed, watching her sleep, her brow furrowed, even in dreams, like she was still seeing things, still walking between worlds. He reached out, brushed a curl from her cheek. You saved me again, he whispered. And I almost didn't listen. He turned to leave, but her voice caught him. You're not signing it, are you? He smiled faintly. No, baby, I'm not. She let out a breath and curled deeper under her blanket. He didn't know if she heard what the lawyer said, but somehow she'd known. As if the danger had seeped into her room like smoke. Kwame walked back to his study. This time he didn't open the folder. He opened the safe instead, removed every document Jabari ever sent, every investment, email, transcript. He laid them out, side by side. A map of a friendship unraveling. He stared at them for a long time, and then, one by one, he began to mark the flaws. Just before dawn, a low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. Amara stirred in her sleep, her hands twitching slightly, fingers gripping the edge of the pillow. Outside, the city blinked awake in gray. In the study, Kwame stood over the fireplace, watching the flames eat through the forged resolution. The edges curled, blackened, then disappeared. He didn't flinch. His eyes remained on the fire until only ash remained. The house was silent again, but this time, not from fear. from resolve. The slap came out of nowhere, sharp, clean, echoing off the walls like the crack of broken glass. Amara's head jerked to the side, her cheek burned, her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't even finished her sentence. Nia stood over her, hand still raised, chest rising and falling with quiet fury. The teacup on the table trembled from the force of the hit. Light flickered from the window, dancing on the glass like judgment. "I told you," Nia said, voice low and icy. "Don't bring your nonsense dreams into this house again." Amara stared down at the floor, blinking fast, her little hands trembling in her lap. The words still sat on the edge of her tongue. About the man in the shadows, about her father signing something again, about the screaming she heard in her sleep. But they died in her throat. Nia turned her back, her robe swaying like a curtain closing on a stage. "Stop poisoning your father's mind. He has enough stress without your cursed imagination." She walked out, heels clicking hard against the tile, leaving the silence behind her. And in that silence, something cracked. Not just in Amara, not just in the air, in the house itself. Kwame sat in the study, staring at a framed photo from 6 years ago. He and Nia in matching navy, Amara in a tiny white dress with lemon yellow shoes, her smile missing 2 teeth. Back then, everything had felt solid, clean, simple. He rubbed his face, tried to clear the weight from his chest. The contract had been burned, the lie exposed, but the unease hadn't gone away. If anything, it was worse. Something about Jabari's silence gnawed at him. The man hadn't called, hadn't shown up, not even a message. For someone so aggressive about business, that silence wasn't peace. It was waiting. Kwame reached into the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out the insurance files Nia had mailed in weeks ago. Standard life policies. He hadn't thought much of them. They were filed, paid, and put away. But tonight, something urged him to look again. He flipped through. 1 page, 2, then paused. A new file, tucked in the back. Different paper, different font. He froze. It was a new policy, issued only 2 weeks ago. Coverage, $5 million. Beneficiary, Nia Adeyemi. Insured, Kwame Adeyemi. His name, only his. He checked the date. 1 week before the crash that killed Musa. His blood ran cold. He pulled up the receipt, the agent's name. The ink was barely dry. He leaned back in the chair, heart hammering, hands numb. It wasn't just about money anymore. It wasn't just about control. It was about something darker, something that breathed in silence. The kitchen lights were off. Only the flicker from the street lamps painted the edges of the countertops in silver and shadow. Kwame stood at the threshold, watching Nia stir sugar into her tea, as if nothing in the world had shifted. He stepped in. "Why didn't you tell me you took out a second policy?" She didn't turn around. "It's called protection, in case something happens to you. I already had 3. Well, maybe I wanted to make sure your daughter doesn't end up begging in the street if you drop dead like Musa." His jaw tightened. "You filed this a week before the crash." She paused, just a beat, then sipped her tea. "You think I caused it? I think you knew something might happen." She turned now, slowly, her face calm but distant. "You're spiraling, Kwame, seeing ghosts where there are none. Maybe that little girl's curses are finally infecting your brain." He stepped forward. "Don't talk about her like that. She's not normal. She's your daughter." "No," she snapped. "She's yours." The words hung between them, like poison in the air. Kwame stared at her. The room shrank. The hum of the fridge felt louder than his heartbeat. She walked past him without another word, and he just stood there, watching the trail of perfume she left behind, sweet and artificial. Later that night, Amara sat huddled on the floor of her room, drawing quietly with a broken red crayon. Circles again, some open, some closed. One had jagged edges like it had exploded. She heard the footsteps outside her door. Then they stopped. A long pause, and then her father's voice. Low, wounded, "Amara." She looked up. "Yes? Can I come in?" She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. He entered slowly, closing the door behind him. He looked older than yesterday, eyes hollow, shirt still buttoned like he hadn't realized what time it was. He sat on the floor beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then he reached out, gently touched the drawing. "What's this?" She traced the broken circle with her finger. "It's the house, but it's cracked now." He nodded, staring at the jagged line. "Yeah, I think you're right." She looked up at him. "Did I do something bad?" "No." "Then why does Mommy hate me?" He swallowed hard. "She doesn't hate you. She just doesn't understand what she's afraid of." "I didn't mean to see those things," Amara whispered. "They just come." "I know." His voice broke. "And they're not bad. They're warnings. I think they're trying to protect us." She leaned her head on his arm. He didn't move, didn't blink, because he knew what had to come next. That same night, Kwame slipped back into the study. He opened the file cabinet, hands steady now. He needed to know more than policy numbers, more than forged signatures. He dug until he found a flash drive, Nia's, hidden in a folder labeled Home Accounts. He plugged it in. Inside, spreadsheets. Nothing suspicious, until one file loaded halfway. TR November plan.docs. He opened it. Most of it was nonsense, but one line. Stage 2, reassign primary asset, clean title. Confirm no living beneficiaries aside from self. Primary asset, clean title. He clicked open the last page. It was a scanned fax, a form. His name, a bank account, transfer instructions. With a note, in case the first accident fails. He leaned back, staring at the screen. The room suddenly felt too quiet, too cold. He heard her voice again in his head. "If you drop dead like Musa." No, not her voice. Her plan. Her plan all along. Outside Amara's door, he stood again. Her crying had stopped, but the drawing sat on the floor. The broken red circle, and inside it, a small stick figure with arms wide floating away. He knelt, placed a hand on it, and whispered, voice breaking, "Is the person I share my bed with praying I don't wake up?" No answer came, only silence. But it wasn't empty anymore. It was full of fear, of truth, of a man finally seeing what he had refused to believe, and a child's drawing that had shown it all along. He parked across the street. Lights flickered inside the hotel lobby, golden and low like stage lights before a scene begins. Kwame sat in the car with the engine off, watching the reflection of his own face in the windshield, a face that no longer flinched, no longer guessed. He already knew what he was going to find. The valet opened the passenger door without a word. Kwame handed him a folded bill, stepped into the night air, and crossed the street like a man walking toward a verdict. The hotel door closed behind him with a soft thud. Perfume hit him first, that familiar floral mix Nia always wore for fundraisers and board meetings, the kind that didn't cling. It followed. He moved through the marble-floored lobby, nodding at the concierge like he belonged. Because he did. The manager was an old friend. He'd called ahead, said he was doing a surprise for an anniversary, said he might need a quiet recording, discreet footage, just in case. The man hadn't asked questions. Kwame took the elevator alone, floor 12. He pressed the button with steady fingers, heart slow like a pendulum in reverse. When the door slid open, the hallway was dim. Too dim for a hotel this upscale. He moved quietly, shoes muffled against the thick carpet. Room 1206. He didn't knock. He didn't need to. He already knew. The bar on the 22nd floor was nearly empty. Late enough that couples had drifted upstairs, early enough that the staff hadn't switched to cleaning mode. Dim red light poured from the chandeliers like blood through glass. Kwame settled into a corner booth. His phone vibrated once. The manager had uploaded the camera logs. Kwame opened the file. There she was, Nia, hair pinned, dress clinging, smiling that soft, effortless smile that had once made him believe she loved him. And across from her, Jabari, his best man, his business partner, his brother in everything but blood. Kwame watched the silent footage, minute by minute, frame by frame, as they leaned in too close, laughed too easily, brushed fingers too long. But it was when Nia reached into her purse and pulled out a small black envelope that something shifted in Kwame's chest. She handed it to Jabari like it was nothing, like it was a gift, a card, a joke. But Kwame knew that envelope. He'd seen it in the safe. A backup account number. A set of documents that didn't belong to her. They talked. Jabari nodded. Nia laughed. Kwame watched his marriage die in silence, in 3.5 minutes of surveillance footage. Back in the room, Nia poured 2 glasses of champagne. Jabari loosened his tie, his back to the window. "He's getting sloppy," he said. "You can see it in his eyes, like he's catching on." Nia smiled, untouched glass in her hand. "He always overthinks. That's his weakness." He hesitates. "He burned the contract." "I expected that." "You expected too much." "I expected him to panic. That was the plan." Jabari leaned against the counter, swirling the drink in his glass. "And the insurance?" Nia's smile widened. "All signed. Filed. He never asked questions." Kwame pressed the recorder deeper into his coat pocket. Every word, every pause, every breath captured. "You really think he won't survive the next one?" Jabari asked. "He won't," she said, eyes glassy under the chandelier. "Because this time, the brakes won't fail. The whole car will." Jabari raised his glass. "To freedom." She touched her glass to his. "To the company." And in the hallway, behind the soundproof wall, Kwame swallowed something hard and bitter that wasn't anger. It was grief. Later that night, he sat alone in his car again. Not parked, not moving, just floating. The recorder sat on the passenger seat, the screen still glowing, a silent witness. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just watched his own hands, fingers that had signed 100 deals, held his daughter, wiped tears, built something from nothing. Now those same hands trembled. He reached into the glove compartment, pulled out the old photo again, Amara in his lap, holding a toy stethoscope. She had said she wanted to heal people back then, back when she believed love fixed everything. Kwame stared at her face, then at the rearview mirror, then back at the building behind him. He turned off the recorder, started the engine, drove home like the road didn't exist. He didn't sleep. He didn't go upstairs. He sat in the living room, lights off, the house dim and hollow. At some point, the door creaked, soft footsteps, then Amara's voice. "Daddy?" He looked up. She wore her blanket like a cape, eyes half closed, curls messy, cheeks flushed from sleep. He opened his arms. She crawled into his lap without asking. He held her close, her small body warm against his chest. After a while, she asked, "Is Mommy mad at you?" "No," he said quietly. "She's just forgotten who she used to be." "Are you sad?" "Yes." "Did you have a dream?" He paused. "I think I woke up from one." She tucked her head under his chin. They stayed that way for a long time, breathing in the dark, listening to the quiet. Kwame closed his eyes and whispered, so soft even he barely heard it. "I saw them together." Amara didn't answer, but her hand found his, and in that moment it was enough. Before sunrise, he returned to the study, plugged in the flash drive, copied the footage, attached the audio. He created a folder, labeled it Truth, and sent it to 2 people. One, his attorney. The other, himself. Then he locked his phone in the safe, sat back in the chair. The dawn came slowly, the city waking up in thin strands of gold and pale blue. But he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't scream. Because now, he didn't have to. The truth was no longer his burden. It was his weapon. And the game had just changed. The mechanic's fingers trembled, not from cold, from guilt. Grease clung to his nails, black under the fluorescent light of the garage. He avoided Kwame's eyes, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. The silence between them pressed like a hand around the throat. "You cut the brakes," Kwame said softly. The man didn't answer. Kwame stepped closer. "I'm not here to scream. I just want the truth." The mechanic licked his lips. His voice came out like gravel. "I didn't know it was for real. I thought it was just a test. They said it was just a scare." Kwame's hands curled into fists. "A scare?" "They paid me cash," the man muttered. "Said no one would be hurt. Just mess up the pressure system. Scare the driver. Push him off his routine, that's all." Kwame's voice dropped. "That driver died." The man looked up then, eyes wide, panic blooming. No, that wasn't supposed to happen. His name was Musa. I didn't know it'd go that far, I swear. Next time, Kwame said, voice flat, it would have been me. The man backed against the wall. Kwame took out his phone. Not to record, not to threaten, just to call. The lawyer, then the police. Back in the car, his breath fogged the windshield. He hadn't even realized he was shaking. The world outside blurred behind the glass, lights smeared like tears. He closed his eyes. That recording in the hotel room, that envelope passed between them. The insurance policy dated a week before the crash. And now this, the man confirming it. They had planned to end him, not bankrupt him. End him. He drove home like he was trying to outrun something. Not fear, not grief, but the final jagged truth. That the woman he once trusted with his life had already counted the value of his death. In the kitchen, the light was on. Amara sat at the table, legs swinging, a glass of milk in her hands. She looked up the moment he stepped in. "Daddy?" His smile broke before it could form. She frowned. "Are you hurt?" "No," he said, walking slowly, "not on the outside." She watched him pull a chair. He didn't sit, just stood there, like his body didn't know how to rest. She whispered, "It's real, isn't it? What I dreamed." He nodded, then knelt beside her. "Yes?" She reached out, touched his face with the back of her hand. "You're not gonna leave me, right?" His voice cracked. "No, baby, not if I can help it." He couldn't sleep again. Not after what he heard. Not after what he knew. He sat in the dark, watching shadows crawl along the walls like they had secrets of their own. Nia didn't come home. Or maybe she did and stayed quiet. The house felt colder than it should, like it knew. At 4:12 a.m., Kwame unlocked the safe. He took out the recorder again. Listened to the voice of his wife say those words. This time, the brakes won't fail. The whole car will. His fingers dug into the armrest. He didn't cry. He couldn't. There was nothing left to cry, just fire and a promise. They wouldn't win. The next day, he walked into his office. The security guard greeted him like always. Kwame nodded, a little slower this time. He sat at his desk, stared at the framed photo of him and Jabari at the grand opening. He picked it up, turned it face down, then reached for his phone. "Obeng," he said, "it's time." "I'm ready." Kwame spoke quietly. The garage confirmed. The brakes were tampered with. Paid in cash. Same mechanic who serviced the car before the crash. A pause. "And the client?" Kwame closed his eyes. Jabari, through a proxy. And Nia, she knew, helped fund it. Obeng's voice hardened. "You have enough. It's not just conspiracy. It's attempted murder. I want every document prepared. I want her name off everything. I'll need your signature by Monday. You'll have it today." Kwame hung up. The air in the room felt different now. Not heavy, sharp. That evening, Amara waited by the stairs, her sketchbook open in her lap. Kwame walked past, paused. "What are you drawing?" She turned the page. It wasn't a house this time. It was a road, a narrow, winding road on a cliff. And at the edge, 2 cars. One had already fallen. The other was just about to. Kwame swallowed. "That's me, isn't it?" She nodded. "But I caught the brakes," she whispered. "I stopped it." He knelt beside her. "You did?" "I don't want to see more things," she said, voice shaking. "I know." "But I will." He didn't argue. Instead, he put a hand on her shoulder, then pulled her into his arms and held her. That night, he drafted a final letter. Not legal, not strategic, just personal. A note for Amara. He didn't know why. He just needed to write it. If something happened, if they tried again, if he didn't make it, at least she'd know he had fought, that he had believed her, that she mattered more than anything he'd ever built. He left early the next morning, but not to work. He went back to the hotel, not to confront, to confirm. He met the manager in a back hallway. The man handed him a flash drive. "Camera footage from the garage," he said. "Lobby, elevator, room floor, all of it." Kwame nodded. "Do you want to watch it now?" "No," he said. "I already know what's on it." He walked out into the daylight and exhaled. The mask was off, but so was the armor. Now it was only him, the father, the betrayed, the survivor. He sat alone that night with Amara sleeping upstairs, the flash drive glowing in his hand. It wasn't just evidence. It was the story of what they'd tried to erase. and still might. But something had shifted in him. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready. He pressed play, watched her face on the screen, heard her laugh, saw the champagne, and then the words that would change everything. If this one doesn't work, we'll try again. And in that moment, something inside him hardened. No more warnings, no more dreams. It was time to fight back. But for now, he climbed the stairs, entered Amara's room, kissed her forehead, and whispered through tears, "I'm sorry I ever doubted you." Her hand, even in sleep, found his, and held on tight. The ballroom shimmered with candlelight. Crystal glasses clinked. Forks whispered against porcelain. A string quartet hummed low in the background, playing something too elegant for the weight pressing against Kwame's chest. He stood near the head of the table, smile tight, suit pressed, collar strangling. The guests laughed politely, unaware. Jabari leaned back in his chair, swirling red wine in a long-stemmed glass, eyes gleaming beneath the chandelier. Nia sat beside him, lips glossed, dress ivory, not a single hair out of place. The toast had been made. The meal was nearly done. The time had come. Kwame walked to the edge of the room and signaled discreetly. A young staff member nodded and slipped behind the curtain. Then Kwame turned back to the crowd. He lifted his glass. "Before we close this evening," he said, voice calm, "I'd like to share something, a small moment, a memory, really." Nia raised an eyebrow. Jabari tilted his head. Kwame pressed a button in his pocket. The speakers popped softly. And then the room fell silent, not by command, by the voice that poured out. Nia's voice. "If this one doesn't work, we'll try again." Someone dropped a fork. Then came Jabari's. "To freedom." Kwame stepped forward. The audio grew louder, clearer, undeniable. "You really think he won't survive the next one?" "He won't," Nia said, "because this time, the brakes won't fail, the whole car will." All movement stopped, glasses frozen halfway to lips, eyes wide, breathing halted. Nia sat perfectly still, her hand trembled, barely but enough. Jabari's jaw tightened, he glanced toward the door. That's when the second signal came. A knock. Then the doors burst open. 2 plainclothes officers stepped in. Behind them, Obeng, calm, steady, holding a folder. "Kwame Adeyemi," one officer said aloud, though they knew who he was. He nodded. Obeng handed over the documents. The officers turned. "Mrs. Nia Adeyemi, Mr. Jabari Mensah, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corporate fraud, and attempted destruction of evidence." A gasp rippled through the room. Nia stood slowly. "You can't be serious." One officer approached her. "Ma'am, don't move." Jabari rose. "This is insane." The second officer cuffed him. The sound of metal clicking shut echoed through the chandeliered silence. Nia's voice sharpened. "You planted this. You're setting me up." Kwame looked at her, really looked at her, not with hate, not with rage, just with the emptiness of a man who had dug through every lie and come up with only ash. "You did this," he said softly. "I just gave it light." She lunged forward. "Amara's cursed. She made you weak. You were mine." The officer pulled her back. Kwame didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't blink. He just watched as the woman who once shared his bed was led out like a stranger. Jabari followed, head bowed, eyes dull, no words left. The guests slowly began to murmur. A few stood to leave. Some glanced at Kwame, others avoided his gaze entirely. Obeng walked over. "They'll be processed tonight. Charges will be formalized by morning. The judge already saw the footage." Kwame nodded. "Thank you. You did what had to be done." "No," Kwame whispered. "I did what no one else would believe." The house was dark when he returned. Not quiet, just dark. Amara waited by the window, arms wrapped around her knees, her sketchbook still open beside her. She looked up when he entered. Her eyes searched his face. "You did it," she said. He sat beside her, slowly, carefully. She leaned against him, and for a long time they said nothing, until she asked, "Are you okay?" He shook his head, but smiled. "I don't know if I'll ever be okay again." She nodded, like she understood that more than most grown-ups ever could. After a moment, she whispered, "Did they cry?" He hesitated. "No, not really." "They didn't feel sorry?" "No, She pressed her cheek against his arm. "I'm sorry they hurt you." He kissed the top of her head. "They tried to end me," he said, barely audible, "but you kept me alive." The sketchbook lay open on her lap. This time she hadn't drawn a house or a car. She had drawn a cage, empty, door open, bird flying out, and above it in the sky a tiny heart, red, whole. Kwame stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "Maybe this is what freedom looks like." And in the silence that followed, something heavy left his chest. Not pain, not anger, something older, something deeper. The sound of a soul unclenching after too long in the dark. The courtroom was too bright. Rows of fluorescent light buzzed overhead, washing every face in a pale, unforgiving glow. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras silent but ready. The air smelled like paper and nerves. Tension sat heavy, like fog trapped inside marble walls. Kwame sat at the front, shoulders squared. His tie was dark. His hands were still. But his heartbeat wouldn't stop climbing. He could feel it in his throat, in his ears, in the soles of his feet. Obeng sat beside him, briefcase open, eyes sharp as glass. Across the aisle, Nia sat in a tailored blazer too perfect for the occasion, lips pressed tight, eyes trained on no one. Next to her, Jabari avoided the cameras. The judge entered. Everyone stood. And just like that, it began. Obeng spoke first. His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It cut. "This is not a case built on speculation," he said. "This is not a case driven by emotion. This is a case rooted in proof. Digital, financial, physical." He turned to the jury. "You will see the footage. You will hear the voices. You will read the numbers, and you will know." He tapped the laptop in front of him. The courtroom dimmed. The screen lit up, and Nia's voice filled the room. "If this one doesn't work, we'll try again." Murmurs rippled. Somewhere near the back, a woman gasped. Then came Jabari's voice, "To freedom." And then the champagne clink, the laughter, the plan. Obeng clicked again. New slide, a scanned insurance document. "Filed," he said, 7 days before a fatal crash. He clicked again. A wire transfer, $5,000 paid in cash to a mechanic who testified under oath. The screen shifted to show a spreadsheet. Every account Nia and Jabari tried to hide. Cleaned. Frozen. He let the silence speak, then walked back to the table. The prosecution rested. Nia's attorney stood, tried to object, said the audio was illegally obtained. The judge raised an eyebrow. It was voluntarily submitted by the hotel manager, stored on company property. The court finds it admissible. Next objection, character assassination. Overruled. Last ditch, emotional manipulation. But there was no manipulation. Just facts and a voice, her own, laid bare for all to hear. Jabari tried to stand. The judge stopped him. "You'll speak when called." When he was finally called, he folded, fast. Said it was Nia's idea. Said he was pressured. Said he didn't know Musa would die. Said everything except the truth. And every word made him smaller. By the time he stepped down, he looked like a man who had lost his name. Then it was Nia's turn. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. When asked if the voice in the recording was hers, she said no. When asked if she signed the policy, she said never. When shown her own signature, she said forgery. The courtroom didn't believe her. No one did, not even the air. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. It wasn't a surprise. What mattered wasn't the verdict. It was the weight of silence that fell when the foreperson stood. "We find the defendants guilty on all counts." The judge leaned forward. "Nia, 3 years in prison, 5 years probation, full forfeiture of assets obtained during marriage. Jabari, 8 years. No parole, no deals." When it was over, the reporters flooded forward. Cameras clicked like static rain. Kwame stepped outside, Amara's small hand gripping his tightly. He didn't smile, didn't raise a fist. He just looked up at the gray sky and breathed. One long breath, like something had been lifted, or broken, or both. Obeng joined him. "You did it," he said. Kwame shook his head. "No, we did what needed to be done." They drove home in silence. Not the heavy kind, the kind that knows what it's survived. Amara leaned her head against the window, watching the city pass like a dream half forgotten. Kwame gripped the wheel tighter. When they reached the house, she didn't get out right away. She looked at him. "Are you happy?" He paused. No. Her voice was quiet. "But we won." He turned to her, eyes tired, voice calm. "Justice doesn't make you happy, baby, but sometimes it saves you." That night, Amara drew again. Not a house, not a road, a scale, perfectly balanced. And underneath it, a heart, split down the middle, one side stitched, one side scarred. Kwame found it on her desk and stood there for a long time, reading it like scripture, feeling it like truth. He didn't say anything, just reached out and turned off the light. But even in the dark, the image stayed. Justice had come. But healing was a different story. And tomorrow, that story would begin. The dream didn't come. Not the blood, not the shadows, not the screaming. Just warmth, sunlight on her cheek, a garden full of color, and laughter that belonged only to the living. Amara opened her eyes to birdsong. No alarms, no whispers, no warnings. For the first time in months, she had slept through the night. Kwame watched from the doorway, a cup of tea cooling in his hands. He didn't speak. He didn't want to break the spell. She sat up slowly, blinking against the light, the blanket sliding off her shoulders. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was soft, gentle, real. "Morning," he answered, stepping inside. "Did I sleep too long?" "No," he said, "just long enough." Later that day, they walked the hallway of the office Kwame used to call a battlefield. Now it was something else, not rebuilt, reimagined. He held Amara's hand as they passed the desks, now filled with quieter energy. New staff, new purpose. She looked around. "Is this yours?" He paused, thought for a moment. It was. She looked up. "Not anymore?" "No," he said. "Now it's ours." At the far end, the glass wall opened into a small, sunlit conference room. It used to feel cold, strategic, sharp. Now it smelled of fresh paper and jasmine tea. The walls had soft gray tones. A painting hung above the table. Not modern art, a child's drawing. A house with roots instead of walls. And a red heart beating at the center. Amara stared at it, surprised. "That's mine." "I know," Kwame said. "They asked me to pick something for the foundation wall." "The foundation?" He nodded. "The Amara Fund." She blinked. "You named it after me?" He smiled. "You saved it. You saved me. And this place, it needs more people like you. More kids who see what others can't, feel what others won't." She stepped forward and touched the frame. Her fingers left a smudge on the glass. He didn't wipe it off. That afternoon, they sat under the old almond tree behind the house. It hadn't bloomed in years. But now, tiny green buds lined the branches. Amara leaned against him, barefoot in the grass, sketchbook resting in her lap. She wasn't drawing warnings anymore. Not cages, not falling cars, not broken homes. She was drawing stars, and hands reaching up toward them. Kwame watched the way her pencil moved, slow, certain. He took a deep breath. "Let it out. What are you drawing now?" She didn't answer right away. Then quietly, hope. They ate dinner together. No television. No phones. Just food and silence and the soft clinking of cutlery. At one point, she laughed at something he said. A real laugh. He froze for a second, then joined her, and the room lit up. Not from lamps, from them. Later that night, while she was brushing her teeth, Kwame opened the drawer beside his bed. Inside, the letter he had once written. A goodbye, just in case. He held it for a moment, then tore it in half, then again, and again, until it became nothing but silence in his hands. Amara curled into her blanket. He sat beside her like he always did, but this time she wasn't trembling, and neither was he. "Can I ask you something?" she whispered. "Anything. If the dreams are gone, does that mean it's over?" He looked at her, at the girl who had seen too much, held too much, saved too much, and somehow still had room to hope. "I think," he said slowly, "they came when I was blind, and left when I started seeing." She nodded, eyes already heavy. "Will they come back?" "Maybe, but we're not afraid of them anymore, are we?" She smiled, drifting. "Not anymore." He stayed until her breathing deepened, until the world quieted around her. Then he stood. But before leaving, he turned, whispered into the still air, You were the light, even in the dark. The next morning, a soft knock came at the door. A boy, skinny, nervous, holding a file in both hands. "I was told the Amara Fund might help," he said. "I'm the first?" Kwame smiled. "Not the first." He stepped aside. "Come in." The boy walked in, wide-eyed. Amara peeked from behind the staircase, then smiled. Big, open, like the door that had just been unlocked. In the garden, the almond tree had bloomed. Pale pink, delicate. But it held, and in the wind something whispered. Not fear, not warning, but the echo of a child's voice once said in panic, now softened into peace. "Don't go, Daddy, there's blood everywhere." But today there wasn't. Only petals, and new footsteps, and the legacy of belief. There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than screams, when truth, no matter how long it takes, arrives like the first light after a long night, quiet, unshakable, and necessary. This story, like so many in the real world, reminds us that wounds inflicted by those closest to us cut the deepest, but also that healing often begins with the simplest act, believing. Sometimes it takes losing everything to recognize what was worth holding on to all along. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it whispers. And forgiveness, when it comes, doesn't erase the past, but helps us carry it with softer hands. The weight of betrayal, the ache of doubt, the fear of being unheard, these are not just scars. They are lessons, warnings, and strangely, they are also gifts. Because in the end, the heart is not made stronger by never breaking, but by breaking and still choosing to love, still choosing to protect, still choosing to believe in someone, in something, or in a future that doesn't yet exist, but waits just beyond the next morning. We don't always get the closure we imagined, but sometimes we get something even better, clarity. The kind that lets us walk forward barefoot if we must, but lighter, freer. If this story moved you, if it echoed something you felt or feared or survived, we'd love to hear from you. Your voice matters here. Leave us a comment, share your thoughts, and let us know how this story resonated with you. And if you'd like to be part of more journeys like this one, filled with raw truths, hard questions, and moments of quiet redemption, don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel. Thank you for listening. And above all, keep believing.